right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us for First Impressions with SEBPO. My name is Melissa Chapman, and I am a collaborator on all things Beeler.Tech. First Impressions, if you're not familiar with the concept, is really a recording of a demo. We like to call it an unboxing of ad tech, if you will. But we're doing something a little bit different today because SEBPO, they don't have ad tech that they're selling, right? They have a service, they're a service organization. And so we're going to take a different tact. So I'm joined here by Rachael Savage from Condé Nast and Todd Sauter from SEBPO, and they're going to talk through the relationship and how things work, so you get a feel for what being a customer of SEBPO is and the type of things they offer. So with that, let's go ahead and dive in. I'd like to thank you guys for joining us and also ask you to go ahead and introduce yourself. So if you could cover your name and your title and your area of responsibility, that would be great. Rachael, would you mind kicking us off?
Sure. Rachael Savage. I am the global head of ad platforms and operations for Condé Nast. That organization encompasses sort of three main pillars. One is going to be our ad technology platforms, largely Google Ad Manager, but sort of anything that connects with that, and the team of people who support it. We have a monetization and yield team that's managing our programmatic stack. And then finally, the ad operations team that handles our day-to-day trafficking.
Great, thanks, Rachael. Todd, go ahead, please.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Todd Sauter. I'm the VP of Service Delivery at SEBPO. So SEBPO, just for a little bit of background, we are an outsourcing company that specifically caters to the digital space. So our clients are publishers, agencies, brands, different ad tech companies. And what we do is we build dedicated teams of employees that are tailored to our clients' requirements. So my role with the organization is primarily focused on the implementation and onboarding of new partnerships. So I work with our new clients up front to kind of tell the story of SEBPO, gather requirements, and ultimately work with our teams in the delivery centers to build the right group of people. And then I stay very close to any new team for 3, 4, 5 months, just to make sure everything is going well and that we're meeting our clients' expectations.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for the overview, Todd. So let's go ahead and get started and talk about, the thing is, not all publishers use outsourcing. So Rachael, why was outsourcing a good option for Condé?
Sure. I think when Condé approached outsourcing, and I would say that we've probably been working with SEBPO for about 3 years, and the partnership started right as I came on board. I didn't initiate it, but I sort of came in at a really critical time. And I think the need was just like, how do we think about all of the things that an ad operations person does in their day to day, and what part can we use support on, and use the extra hands, and use the extra time, because I think thinking about outsourcing, it's not 9 to 5. It is sort of global and happens around the clock. So it was really just about how do we scale the work that we're doing so that we can do more and potentially even up-level some of the things that the team on site was doing.
Awesome. Makes a ton of sense. So I know that, you were in close communication there around the time that this was all happening. So what did SEBPO do or not do that made them the right choice for Condé, the right partner?
Sure. One, I think that the specific ad ops expertise was really important. And I think that, when the team was evaluating partners, that was first and foremost. There are partners out there, and I've experienced this in the past, that do outsourcing, but then, our team had to train them on how to use Google Ad Manager. And it's sort of like, working with SEBPO, the team is coming on board with a wealth of experience using different platforms. So you sort of hit the ground running in teaching them not about what's happening in the industry, but what's happening with your business and sort of the unique flavor that Condé would bring to the work at hand. So that I think that those two things were super important. And I think the team, honestly, just the hands-on approach that the the account team had during the process of thinking through how to scope the endeavor was really important. And those two things combined, I think, made it work.
Awesome. Todd, can you speak to a little bit piggybacking off of Rachel's comment there about the different tools, and you certainly don't have to list all the tools that your team support, but can you give us kind of an idea of some of the breadth there?
Yeah, I think that the key thing to impress is that SEBPO is platform agnostic. So we use the platforms that are important to our clients rather than forcing them to use certain platforms or even to engage with us in a certain way. So we probably have anywhere between 40 and 50 active AdOps partnerships at the moment, and all using a unique suite of platforms. So there's well over probably 150 that we're using on a regular basis. So we do have internal subject matter expertise in most of the platforms that are out there. So when our clients, when we find out a new client has a particular set of platforms that they utilize, not only are we able to work with our clients to get up to speed on the work, but also we have those internal subject matter experts that we can turn to. So hopefully we're able to educate our own team on fundamentals. So we only come to our clients for assistance when it comes to those nuances.
Wow, that's a lot of tools. I guess I hadn't really thought about that combination before, but I think that's a nice segue to talk about, Todd, if you could take us through kind of the way SEBPO thinks about onboarding a client, and, learning about all those tools and that whole process and how they're doing things today.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I alluded to before, we don't come to our clients with like a set solution that they either buy into or don't. All of our partnerships are customized. We do certainly have best practices, recommendations, things like that we are always offering up. But the way that we start a partnership is by diving deep with our client to really build an understanding of what they're doing at the present moment, to understand the platforms, workflows, the tools and technologies that are being utilized, and then also finding out, is that the way they want it to work? And if not, what is the ideal workflow in their mind? And then we craft a solution where the SEBPO team members are going to be able to seamlessly fit into that workflow, to make it as easy as possible to transact with the team members. We don't want you to have to follow an ancillary process to go work with the team. We want them to feel like a natural extension of our clients' teams. So there's a lot of upfront planning that is done.
Mm-hmm.
We like to come on site if possible, in a pre or post pandemic world, to sit with teams, to see what they're doing. And we do a lot of requirements gathering through something that we refer to as the discovery meeting, which is like the big kickoff meeting. And that's where we very systematically talk through and discuss all of the tasks and services that our partners looking for, the technical requirements, communication protocol, workflow, and on down the line to really set the stage for success. And all of that happens well before we're actually assembling the team members and prepping them to go live.
So does that help you assemble the team?
Absolutely.
Right.
Everything that we learn from our customers, from their workflow and tasks and services, even down to like the skill set, what are the attributes that you're looking for in the team members, all plays into the selection process of which dedicated team members will be arranged.
That makes sense. And then in that discovery meeting, or maybe today, a series of discovery meetings, right, in the virtual world, who's there from the client perspective in that room, or does it vary depending on the engagement?
It varies, but it's usually a collection of folks from the client side. Oftentimes it is maybe the managers of the team that will be acting as an extension of, anyone who can speak to the work to be performed, the challenges and things like that. They're all important to speak with during the discovery process. It's also our opportunity to meet some of those individuals for the first time and talk about how we'll be working together. And then also, if time allows, it can also be very effective for me to shadow someone actually performing the work. So we're able to actually see, and it just adds additional context and helps build out the understanding of exactly what needs to be done.
That makes sense. Makes sense. Rachel, so you get an outsourcer, right? You get a SEBPO, you have this partnership. You've got this great discovery process, right? Where they're kind of figuring out and assembling a team on your behalf. How do you, as a leader of an AdOps team, then look to say, how am I going to integrate this into my team effectively day to day, right? What's that feel like?
Sure. I think that can be a little bit challenging depending on how you approach it. And what I found was, we did the discovery, and we included our AdOps managers, and they're really thinking about it out of the gate as like, how am I going to take this campaign that came in and just sort of send it over email to a team that I can't sit and sort of shadow and watch, but need to trust. So one, I think that like overcoming the trust piece and just getting them familiar with it means go ahead and do it a couple of times and like build that rapport. There's sometimes fear of like, okay, well, if we outsource what I'm doing, then what am I going to go do? And so I think that those two things, can be obstacles. But here's what I, said to my team is, if we're living in the world of ad tech and ad operations, there is a never-ending font of things to do, and I will find something for you to do.
100%.
It never ends, and that means we're doing our job right. So I think one of the things that I saw coming in is how do I use this team to supplement the way that we work, and that's not just send the campaign over the fence or ask them to check the creative or sort of the usual tasks that would happen in ad ops, but like how do I design sort of a process that runs parallel to my team to build some better habits. And so that's where I said, okay, I want this team offshore to be thinking about the sponsorships we launch, and I want them to come to the table every day at noon and give me a list of the deals that are supposed to go live. I want them to have checked them to make sure that they're ready to go. If they're not ready to go, I want them to flag that to me so that by, around lunchtime, I can say to the team, this is what's left to do and I know about it. By 4 o'clock, they should have finished that work. 4, 7, I don't care, as long as it's there. But then by midnight, we had the offshore team also going on the site to make sure that the campaigns launch as expected. And once that check was complete, we'd have them by about 4 in the morning, send us an email recap of what worked and didn't work for those sponsorship launches. And so, there's things that happen that are unexpected. We all have the ad ops stories of having to stay up at midnight and make sure that campaigns launch on time. Now we're using a team offshore to do some of that and catching mistakes much sooner. But it also started to create this like drumbeat for the team so that they knew what to expect and they could trust the team to support them in a way to help and be additive to their workflow. So it was almost like a sort of parallel track that we built to sort of get them more integrated and helping them work together, which was really, really powerful, I think. But it also created some structure where we could start to get data and feedback to say, all right, of the 100 sponsorships we launched this past week, we had about 80% of those that like got set up in time and went flawless. The other 20%, maybe it's a site issue, maybe it's a communication barrier, but I think it started to give us a lot of feedback on what was working and not working over time. And that process has actually become how we bonus the team now to say like, are you hitting your marks on all your sponsorships or, any of the other processes we've had, but just like sort of getting into that rhythm was a really nice thing to do out of the gate with the launch of the partnership.
Yeah, and just to add to that, what Rachel did was super smart there, to think of us in a very thoughtful manner and actually integrate us into their internal workflow. Of course, our teams, all day long can field ad hoc requests, right? Set up this campaign, please, generate this report here. But if you can structure your workflow in a way where our team members can operate independently, and one of them being midnight sponsorship checks, right, where there's a whole process surrounding that, and we're just kind of feeding the results of our quality assurance checks. but also, daily campaign optimization procedures. That's another opportunity for us to operate with independence and return results. Reporting on a daily, weekly, monthly cadence, custom reporting, things like that are very common uses of our team where they don't have to be prompted to do the work. They can follow a predetermined schedule and bring that value to the company as well.
And I imagine, and I think you've said it, Rachel, but I imagine that builds huge trust with that publisher team, right? It's not just a task thrown over the wall, sort of.
Yeah, I think that it started to become a little formulaic where we could count it. And then, as the team started to adopt more, I could actually kind of measure it and see who was holding on to that fear of letting go of their work.
Yeah.
And then really like say, okay, let's go. Let's clear the obstacles for you to be successful, which helps us like examine our own processes. What are we doing wrong to make this not work? And sort of clear the path. I think what's been remarkable to look at is just, I've been bragging about the fact that we've outsourced a lot of our programmatic setup. Like I've been blessed to have a very small programmatic ad ops team, setting up all of our deal IDs and sort of managing the volume that's largely happening offshore. So it went from like, run of the mill campaigns. This was 3 years ago to sort of steady trust and getting those tasks, but then being able to build up those processes to have multiple versions of them, hitting a lot of different types of campaigns, custom ad unit, QA, like a little bit of everything we do. We've been able to build those feedback loops and to drive some horsepower in what we're doing.
Oh, that's great. So it's a great, if it feels like you had a vision about how you might approach this, right? If I'm a smaller publisher, I'm thinking about like, how might you and this is a question for either one of you, where might you recommend they start, right? Like what's a good approach if it just feels like, wow, that's a bit much?
I guess there's like two things that I'm sort of we're teasing out of this conversation that I think are helpful. What are the things that you find yourself doing repetitively that you wish you could either outsource or automate? And I think that those are clear candidates. But I liken this to this is cheesy jazzercise schedule. We could say soul cycle schedule, whatever's cool, but just something that is going to happen every Tuesday night at the same time. There may be a substitute teacher sometimes, but like right as rain, this thing's going to happen. I myself get busy with meetings and other things, and life gets in the way of making sure something happens at 7:00. But if we tell an outsourced team of 12 or however many that at 7:00 something has to happen every day, they're going to make it happen. And so that's what has been great about, like Todd said, I think the reporting tasks or sort of repeatable things that we know we want to build into what we do, but may not, have the time or brain energy to get there. It's been nice to be able to set aside the time and have people dedicated to those activities.
Yeah, and one of the things I was going to share, so a little bit on my backstory. I'm a former client of SEBPO's. I've been with SEBPO for about 5 years, but before that, I had my own SEBPO team. And the way I approached kind of figuring out the right entry point for this was I was actually very transparent and open with my team. First, so they wouldn't feel, intimidated that we were bringing on a partner, but I really talked to them about the value that SEBPO could bring. And I asked them to all look at their individual day-to-days and figure out, what are the time sucks? What are the things that are preventing you from being more strategic and more client-facing with our partners, which was really what the goal of our outsourcing partnership was, to free our internal team members up. And we really built our services list that we wanted to introduce to the SEBPO team based on that direct feedback. Kind of figuring out the services, the amount of time associated with those services. And we did it really in a matrix form, and that became our launch plan. So we had our list of things that we wanted to focus on, and we went one by one and figured out how to best integrate SEBPO into that workflow.
Yeah, I think actually in my past life, I've done something similar with tell me all the stuff that's top of your list that you want to move out there. So you alluded to something, Rachel, that I wanted to dig into just a little bit. You were talking about, right, coming up with that drum beat and building that system. Was I right in hearing that you were actually optimizing processes while you were onboarding or going through that? So I think that's interesting, and I'd love to hear more about it, because I think that sometimes we think that you have to have everything perfect and buttoned up and all your documentation and your processes have to be perfect to bring a partner in.
No. I mean, I stepped in to our ad ops team at sort of an interesting point in transition for our organization, where Condé Nast manages over 18 different brands, and the teams were going through CMS migrations and consolidating ad tags on the site and doing a lot of really heavy lifting around the tech side of things, which also has an impact in how your sales team and sort of operational support teams are organized in some cases. And so the intersection of those two things got a little chaotic for a little while. But I think we were able to say, I think to your point of what are the tasks you wish you could get help with? Let's go ahead and like set aside some time for that. But then where do we want to go? And how do we just make sure that we're setting up the right processes to like make sure that things happen right as rain, so that we can step back and like organize some other things. But you gotta, you sort of have to like, I don't know what the right analogy is, but like keep the motor running and change the car part at the same time. That's really a weird one on the fly, but like you get where I'm going with it.
Yeah,
it's just
100%.
You got to keep everything moving at the same time. So I think that was one of the more valuable experiences I had, was having the opportunity to use the SEBPO team as part of the change that we were trying to create at the time.
Yeah, and I was just going to mention on in regard to the documentation and maybe not feeling prepared. I mean, our partnerships are set up to grow and evolve. We're building a dedicated team, and we want them to feel like they're your own employees. So as your business evolves and there's new work to be performed, or that we pivot and we grow right along with our partners. Most of the partnerships that we walk into don't have great documentation and things like that. So our team is often used to create that documentation. A training can consist of, a video recording of a walkthrough, which a live walkthrough, and we'll record that and use that to build our standard operating procedure documentation and even put it back in front of our clients for approval. So sometimes clients use us as the trigger for creating that documentation that then is even used by our clients' employees in the future. So we certainly walk into many different partnerships that have different levels of preparedness.
I think that's great, because I think documentation is one of those pain points for publishers. Like, everybody knows they should have it, but they have a hard time creating it or keeping it up, or that sort of thing. And so I think that's great news, right? That you guys can take that on. How do you handle if there's changes, right? A change to a process, for example, or a new product rollout? Like, how does that, so you've got your original stuff the team's running, but how do you handle those change management things along the way?
So our teams handle it just the same way. When there are process changes or things that are changing in the workflow, those do get documented as well. Documentation needs to be a priority for us, because we're often the outlet for scalability for our clients, right? So when a client has a lot of volume where they need more assistance than what the current team can provide due to just the headcount, when we scale up, we don't come back to our clients and say, hey, got 3 more people for you to train. That's not the way we work. We leverage the video recordings. We leverage that documentation. That's why it's so important. We leverage peer-to-peer training in order to ramp up the next wave of team members. So when our clients ask us to increase the team size, we just come back to them with the names of the people, the contact information, and the date that they're going to be live. And then when they go live, they're not learning, they're working on that day.
Yeah, that's great. You said something in there that made me think about Q4 or times like Q4, right? So how does the SEBPO handle, and I'll pose this to either one of you, whichever avenue you'd like to take there. so Q4 was always a very big time for me in my past life, right? Sometimes that's different parts of the year depending on the type of publisher you are. But like, how do you plan together? And because you don't want to react to it at the time, right? You want to be ahead of it if at all possible. So can either one of you speak to that?
Sure. I think the Q4 use case is very real. And Todd, like, it's nice to hear you think or talk about the things that I don't have to think about, because I don't think about those things, which has been lovely. And I know that happens because I've experienced it, but hearing it it's very true. When it comes to Q4, we had a reality of, our team is based in New York, and we needed West Coast support that extended on a Friday afternoon. And, our team is leaving at 6 or 7 o'clock New York time, which is only 3 o'clock in California. And so there's still business to be done. And so we have added resources to help the team, but also added resources, thinking about going into the weekend. So while we built the team to go Monday to the Friday, we would extend it by a day to say, actually go to Monday to Saturday. And I'm thinking about all of the time zones around the world as I say that, but more or less it created an ability for us to give, full coverage to the Americas team as we needed to. There's other, seasonal things that we have. Obviously we operate Vogue. And so Fashion Week, my team was very worried about staffing at some point, and we said, let's just work with the SEBPO team to come up with, a little squad during that month, really, so that the communication was really tight. And so they created a Slack channel, and it was sort of like a dedicated team for that seasonal event that we would have. And we've used that model a couple of times and then dissolved it because we don't need it anymore. But it's been really nice to be able to reach out and sort of move the resources around or add as we need to, without having to think about all the things that Todd mentioned.
Yeah, and one of the other great outlets for planning is that all of our accounts are assigned an onshore client success manager. So our client success manager role is a really important role because they are part of the day-to-day of the partnership. So once we get up and running, although we do have great leadership in our delivery centers, we don't let them operate with total independence. We have an onshore client success manager there to shepherd the partnership along. They're on every governance call, every training. Whenever an escalation is needed, they're there to pick up the phone and field that call. So the client success manager is really the partner who you can do that strategic planning with. We can discuss, volumes and spikes and when the support is needed, and we can map out a strategy. So that's something that we will always make a talking point with our partners, so we're ready to scale up and down with their business. And then just a note on the scalability too. When we build a team, not only do we have the billable team members, so let's say it's a 5-person team, but we also align a bench, what we call bench team members. So those are extra non-billable team members who are trained and dedicated to the business, just like those other core team members. Something we do to safeguard our partnerships and cover things like PTO if somebody's going to be on holiday, something like that. But also what that does is give you almost immediate scalability. If there is going to be work that is going to come in a huge volume and in a short burst, it gives you the opportunity to tap into those bench resources for that boost of capacity. And then if that capacity is needed indefinitely, we'll make the bench team member a permanent part of the team and backfill the bench position.
So that speaks to, so thank you so much for that, Todd. How you thinking about teams growing and keeping people on staff and getting them trained on new technologies and what's going on in the industry, like how do you work through evolving your team? I mean, you talked a little bit about it there. Can you expand on that a little bit, Todd?
Absolutely, yeah. So we are always in a position where we are preparing for the future, preparing for future partnerships. So we constantly build classes of new employees who join the organization, and they're run through, in the case of AdOps, kind of an AdOps boot camp, where they're given really fundamentals on the industry. They are, talked through the different teams that we have and the services that we provide, and really educated on SEBPO as a whole. And then those individuals are assigned throughout the organization and aligned with different teams so they can begin shadowing and learning hands-on on these different partnerships as well. And then when it comes time to build new teams, we have these people who've been with us for months, have been shadowing and living and breathing the current teams, who become some of the team members that will spin off for new pieces of business, as well as bench team members from within the organization or other team members who are primed for leadership positions. That's how we're always building a pool of talent, cultivating them, educating them on the fundamentals, and then aligning them with the right opportunity when it arises.
Got it. That makes a ton of sense. I'd like to shift just a little bit, right? So I feel like you've given some great layout, and Rachel, you talked a little bit about like that Fashion Week piece, right? And in creating that subgroup that then gets dissolved later. But let's talk in general about like, how does the day-to-day relationship feel? Like, how are the teams interacting? How are they checking in with one another? How often are they doing that sort of thing? Just give me a little bit more color there, if you don't mind.
Sure. So I think the teams are interacting every day, and they're doing that over Slack and email primarily. There's a question of workflow tools. We don't have workflow tools. Sometimes I wish we had them. Sometimes I don't. It's sort of a mixed bag, but we're working really well over email and Slack, I think, and that's going to be just the day-to-day communication. But we also have a weekly status meeting with our client support team and the offshore team, and they're providing a report going into that meeting, sort of outlining the work that's been done, any questions, how the team is being utilized, lots of great charts in terms of the types of tasks that have been sent over by the team or any points of clarification. And that meeting is really meant to show the work that's being done, get that clarification, talk about any process updates. But it's also a great checkpoint for them to sort of get the face-to-face time. I think one of my favorite parts of the report might be the very end of the document that shows all of the people on the team and their photos of cake cutting. There's a lot of cake cutting that's happening all over the world. I wish we had more cake sometimes too, but
who doesn't like cake?
Yeah, I honestly will say that, like, it's funny to think about it now when we're doing this over Zoom and not in person. But 2 years ago, we had to really think about how to develop that rapport with the team when you're not in the same place and you may not be on video or Zoom all day. And I think that those are really smart ways that the SEBPO team has sort of brought the team to life, so that when the requests are going over the fence, they can talk about shared interests or, hey, happy birthday. Those little things go a long way, and just sort of help build a connection between the groups.
Yeah, and from a communication standpoint, we have those roles like the client success manager, and every team has a team lead. So they're there to help support the group and facilitate meetings and things like that. But they are not intended to be gatekeepers of communication. We want every single member of the Condé Nast team to feel comfortable contacting every single member of the SEBPO team and interacting directly at any level. So that's the important takeaway. That we really want the partnerships to become personal and to feel as if they are true coworkers.
Right. So more facilitation, right, in those
Precisely.
Leadership roles. But I think it's super smart to have that. We've all learned this year, right? It's harder to connect with people when you're not in the same space. So I think it's smart to make those extra efforts and remember that it's a person over there with a birthday and just had a baby or is getting married or whatever. So that's nice. Well, I feel like you guys have had a long-standing relationship. Sounds like it's very successful. When I think about working with a partner, I always think, or when I think about having a relationship, I always think about a partnership and what makes what takes it from just a relationship or a service provider to a partnership. And I'm hoping that you both could weigh in, whichever one would like to start first, on what makes this relationship work and how you keep it on track, right? Because every relationship needs a little bit of work, right?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, transparency and honest feedback, I think is really a key. If there's, unhappiness or if anything is going astray on either side, it's important that we address that and really come together to collaborate on the solution. So if that's SEBPO not delivering, or maybe it's the quality of the input that's coming to the SEBPO team that's resulting in the challenge, I think the important thing is that we just address it head on. So, certainly from the US team, we bubble those things up immediately for discussion, or we take action if anything is drawn to our attention. But overall, I think that's really what helps us thrive. I don't think anybody gets better if everybody says, pretends everything's okay. So, certainly that is a key to success in any partnership.
I agree with that. I mean, I walk into a lot of these things thinking like, not only should I be giving Todd feedback on how things are going, but I want the feedback on my team too. And if there's something we're doing that, uh, hope it's not intentional, but unintentionally getting in our own way, then let's talk about it. You can talk to me about it and we can sort of approach the team. I sort of think back to, we did make the journey together to meet the team in Bangladesh. And I remember sitting there and be like, okay, we met everybody. This is really great. And, one of the team members in SEBPO said, okay, well, let's get down to business and write a process. And let's actually do it. Like, are you guys ready to go? And they're like, yeah, well, my team was like, we'll do it when we get home. And they're like, no, we're here now with the team. Let's go. And I just appreciated that, sort of like go get it momentum. But that's what I was thinking. And it was just sort of like, no, we're here. You've got everybody in place. Let's go. And you've got experts like Todd and the team to sort of think about process and documentation in a way that, many AdOps people don't have that experience out of the gate. And so, just really sort of collaborating and helping the team thrive, I think has been really, really nice to watch. So I'm thankful for it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, folks, I feel like we've kind of covered it. Rachel, Todd, I'd like to thank you so much for taking your time and walking us through this unboxing, if you will. Todd, if anybody would like to reach out to SEBPO, what's the best way or best email they should use to contact somebody?
Yeah, email is the best way, and it's info@sebpo.com, SEBPO.
Great, thank you. And of course, you can always contact Beeler.Tech. We're happy to make introductions, answer questions, whatever we can do to help facilitate and support the publishers in the community. So thanks, everybody.